Welcome back for more Saw Story. Grab a drink, take a seat, double check that you're safe, and get ready for 5 true scary stories found on Reddit. I'd like to preface this story by acknowledging that the truthfulness or reliability of asylum or escaped mental patient stories tends to be questionable. The reason why I'm skeptical of those stories is that large-scale closures of asylums began in 1967 through the 1980s and were completely decommissioned by 2015. So I raise my eyebrow whenever someone talks about spooky asylum stories that happened within the last 2 decades or so. Still, I will be sharing my story as factually as my memory allows and refrain from exaggerating any aspect because, unfortunately, this story is true, through and through. I often visited my grandparents' home in Traverse City, northern Michigan during the summers with my parents. Traverse City is a beautiful place, produces 75% of the world's cherries, and was home to the Traverse City Regional Psychiatric Hospital, which operated from 1885 to 1989. Since the United States federal government officially deemed the hospital worthy of preservation for its historical significance, the building on the hospital grounds were guarded by patrolling security guards. The TC Psychiatric Hospital was massive, including 70 or 80 buildings of various sizes. Some buildings have now been converted into restaurants, gift shops, tourism traps, cafes, etc., but many remain empty and abandoned. Underneath the hospital is a sprawling brick tunnel system which the hospital staff used to safely transport the patients from building to building in the frigid winter temperatures. I am sure there were instances where patients underwent cruel treatments or were subjected to the care of horrible doctors, but the TC Psych Hospital had a great reputation. Many teenagers, including myself at the time, were unashamedly fascinated with the hospital and its history. As a result, we would often break into abandoned buildings through unbarred windows or doors with pickable padlocks. While there were a few cases where teens would get caught and charged with breaking and entering, as long as we were stealthy, stuck to our safe entrances, and paid attention to the guards' patrol patterns, we could go in and out without worry. I'm not advocating for or trying to justify my criminal act of B&E, but breaking into the old hospital was almost a rite of passage for the TC teens. The hospital's interior was terrifying. There was old, stained, and broken equipment and furniture, crumbling walls and floors, vandalism, strange old building noises, and complete and utter darkness in the tunnels, basements, and lower floors. Using flashlights was too risky with the guards patrolling, so we often navigated the hospital by memory and our dimly lit phone screens. As you can imagine, our frightened youthful imaginations ran wild with horror stories, which is pretty ironic considering we made up most of those stories. Unfortunately, during my last trip inside, I encountered something all too human that terrified me to the point I swore off ever returning. The story takes place around 10 p.m. The moonlight was dim and most patrol guards left for the day. Clad in black, my friend Jason and I entered through the same window we always used and followed our regular path to one of the tall jutting spires to sit by the windows that overlooked the entire city. There was only one thing different about this venture from our others: a new, faint, and unexplainable smoky odor. Not smoky like fire, but something more akin to incense. The smell was so faint we almost thought we were imagining it, but it grew stronger as we got closer to our destination. Rather than taking the stairs that led up to the spire, we followed the smell down a different hallway until we reached a room with a deep red glow emanating from the doorway. Rather than doing the smart thing by leaving immediately, we couldn't resist the urge to walk closer and investigate. When we finally reached the room, I audibly gasped and felt Jason grip my wrist so hard his nails left marks on my skin. We found a large ring of red votive candles and burning incense circling a drawing of a pentagram with the sigil of Baphomet. In the center of the drawing was a dead, bloodied bird surrounded by black feathers. Bear in mind that I was raised devoutly Catholic, so seeing this image filled me with a sense of fear stronger and more paralyzing than any ghost sighting ever could. Later on that night, Jason told me I immediately started mumbling prayers, but I personally don't remember doing that. I wouldn't be too terribly surprised though. While the duration felt infinite, I'm not sure how long we stared at the occult scene before hearing a man's low and ominous voice behind us saying, "Welcome, friends." I promise you that there was absolutely nothing friendly about the way that guy greeted us. Jason and I screamed bloody murder, whipped around, and saw two nicely dressed but frazzled looking adult men smiling at us. The man in front of me held something in his hand, and while I can't say for sure what it was, I remember thinking it was a knife, which wouldn't be too crazy of a guess considering they recently sacrificed a bird. Jason and I sprinted past the two, and I felt someone's fingers grab the back of my shirt. Thankfully, the occultist's hand didn't have a solid hold on me because I ducked and managed to escape his grip. The men shouted for us to stop running. We obviously didn't. We heard their footsteps chasing after us for a little while, but thankfully Jason and I had broken into the hospital so many times that running through the unlit rooms, hallways, and tunnels was no challenge. When we finally reached and vaulted through our escape window, the occultists were nowhere to be seen or heard. We kept running through the hospital grounds until we reached Jason's car with no concern for the patrol guards. We would have rather gotten caught by the guards than the occultists. I puked twice in the parking lot, whether the cause was fear, sprinting non-stop for 1.5 miles, or a combination of the two. I'm not sure what would have happened if the occultists caught us, but I know for certain they weren't going to crack open a beer and sing Kumbaya by the candlelight. I'm not familiar with cultist practice or satanic rituals, so I'm not sure what the men were trying to do, or if they were trying to summon something. If anyone hearing this story is more knowledgeable on the topic, please share your thoughts. Jason and I never returned to the hospital during that summer or any of the following summers. While we aren't close now that we're adults, I know that horrifying experience will keep us cemented in each other's memories until we die. Decades ago, in my youth, I lived in a small town in India without modern amenities like smartphones, video games, or the internet. Entertainment back then was going to the cinema, a special treat for us kids. I vividly remember a particular night when I eagerly went to watch a re-released old black and white film in the theater. The cinema was on the eastern side of town, separated from our place by a major railway line. Although it was a late night show, I managed to get permission from my family. After an exciting evening at the movies, the show ended at around 1 a.m., and I made my way back home. Instead of taking the safe route through the manned railway gate, I decided to take a shortcut and cross the railway tracks directly. As I walked in the darkness, lost in my thoughts about the movie, I suddenly felt something soft at my feet. Unable to see clearly, I curiously reached down and found my hand grasping long, wet hair. Startled, I realized I was looking at a human head without a body nearby. Fear engulfed me, and I hurriedly moved away. With my senses heightened, I carefully made my way back, avoiding any mishaps, and managed to reach the other side of the railway line. Once there, I couldn't forget the eerie encounter. The next day, a local newspaper reported that a woman had jumped in front of a moving train. This haunting incident remained etched in my memory, and I couldn't share it with anyone for a long time. It took me a while to overcome the fear and to see darkness as just darkness again, without the haunting image of that night. I'm a 33-year-old female that grew up in a haunted house. It was an old Queen Anne farmhouse in Wisconsin that was built in 1865. During World War II, it was a halfway house for soldiers returning home from the war. There were odd things that would happen pretty routinely. Radios would turn up or down on their own, pictures would fall off shelves, my bedroom door wouldn't stay closed no matter what I did. Often you could hear people talking in the next room over, but then no one would be there. There's a spot on one of the landings on the stairs that goes up to the second floor that was always ice cold. Didn't matter if it was dead of summer or if the heat was turned on. Sometimes the entire house would boom and shake out of nowhere like someone hit the house with their car. And sometimes there was a banging noise in the ceiling, which would start at one end of the house and then rapidly, too rapidly to be some kind of critter, it would travel along the ceiling to the other side of the house. There was a freak cherry tree in the backyard that grew as tall as the house, which was 3 stories tall. There was also a young woman with blonde hair and a white dress who appeared pretty commonly to guests in the front hallway. These are just a few examples of the creepy stuff that would happen in my home. One day, when I was in middle school, a friend from school named Josie and I decided to play around with her Ouija board. Mind you, the timing for this was not good. Josie's mom had passed away and her dad was abusing her at home, so she had been staying with us for a few days while we figured out what to do. So things were tense and emotional, and Josie was in a vulnerable position. On top of that, we didn't know what we were doing. That night, we must have made contact with something angry, or made something angry. I don't really remember how the seance started, or what really led up to things getting out of hand. All I remember is looking at Josie, and she had her switchblade pressed to her own throat, with the edge against her skin. I opened my mouth to say something, yell maybe, but at that moment the bedroom door opened, shoving the chair that was holding it closed out of the way, and then slammed shut, just as the lamp on my nightstand went flying across the room, shattering against the opposite wall. When I asked her what she was doing, all she said was, "I couldn't move." We never spoke about that night again, and that's the only time I can remember ever being actually afraid of what was in that house. This story was when I was younger and braver and kinda did stupid stuff without thinking. This story is a wild ride, and it's all true. I used to work at a pizza shop down the street from 2 p.m. until they closed. I usually didn't get off until around 11 or so at night. I had a car but was close enough to walk, so I did that most days to save gas. This particular night, I was doing my usual thing, jamming to one of my playlists, tired but happy to have a good job and just generally happy with the way my life was going. Up ahead, about a block from my place, I see an attractive guy in dark clothing walking, but not with a purpose really. He was taller than me, maybe 5'10" to 6 foot or so, and had shaggy brown hair. The closer I got to him, the more I could tell he was really good looking. His features kind of escape me now, but I do remember he had very thick eyebrows. I took an earbud out, and because I'm from a dangerous city and haven't really cared about stranger danger, I decided to talk to him, maybe even flirt a little bit. "How is your late night going?" "It's good, just looking to get drunk." "Oh, that I can help with. I've got a minibar at my place. I live just down the street." That was not verbatim how the conversation went. During the walk back to my place, I got no red flags from this guy. He seemed totally normal, and I was honestly thinking, wow, just through sheer luck I meet this super hunky guy, and he seems cool and fun. I was beside myself, really. So we get to my apartment on the second floor. I jump into host mode and offer him a seat and tell him to make himself comfortable. The apartment is about 640 square feet, so it's very small. Except for the bathroom, you can see the rest of the apartment from any area. I head into the kitchen, and while I'm pouring drinks, I glance back over at him. It was then that I noticed the first red flag. As I was asking him questions, he is more delayed with his answers, especially more so than he just was on our walk here. It was just odd to me. I go back over to the couch, pass him his drink, and sit down next to him. "So what do you do for work?" I asked. "Oh," he replied, "I'm not here for you." He put his drink down on the table. "What you got?" he asked me. His nice guy vernacular and friendly face are now gone. I'm having a hard time processing what he means by this. I said, "What you got?" The second I stand up, he pushes me back. I fly across the room, hitting the floor, but not hard enough to pass out or anything. I get right back up, but he's already grabbed my laptop and my work bag. As I start towards him, he cuts around me and makes his way toward the front door. I'm right behind him when he makes it outside. I manage to grab hold of him and we tussle again in front of the door. Now I shout out, calling on help from the neighbors. It's late at night, so no one comes. I'm shouting, "Please help, I'm being robbed." The thing is, he has my laptop. It's not just any laptop. I hate to admit it, but my entire life was on that laptop at the time. Important photos that I did not have backed up, thousands of dollars of music programs, video game programming stuff for a development team I helped, really expensive software. It was, in my mind, irreplaceable. I give chase down the stairs, across the dog walk park, and as I start to gain on him, we tussle again. and the only thing I can focus on is my laptop. I knew that I had to, at any cost, get my laptop back. That was absolutely all I cared about. Somehow, I get a grip on my laptop. I tug at it again, and I guess he decides I'm not worth all of this struggle. He gets up and starts to take off again. I now realize he still has my work bag. It has my cell phone and wallet with my license, debit card, AAA card, etc. in it. I take off towards him again, and this time, he shouts back at me, "Follow me and I'll stab you again." This makes me stop in my tracks, and he gets away. Underneath a street lamp along the sidewalk, I immediately inspect myself. Was I stabbed? No way. There's no way. Then, I see blood running down my leg. I see blood on my arm. 2 places he cut me good. I'm scared, but the blood makes it look way worse than it is. I decided that's enough. I got my laptop and that's all I really wanted anyway. I hobble back home and get inside and lock my door. I called the cops using my neighbor's phone the next day and filed a police report explaining the situation, showing the stab wounds, and declining medical services. I can't afford that, and I was fine, all things considered. So, all that guy got was a crappy cell phone and a wallet with like $30 to $40 in it. The cop called my friend back several days later and said they were not able to find the guy, but they would keep me posted. This was years ago, so I don't know where the robber is now, but I have every electronic thing of importance backed up on multiple drives these days. I am in university right now, but staying with my parents at their house for the summer. I was hanging out with one of my friends and we decided to go to a party. I met this guy around my age and we were talking and having fun, but it was nothing too serious, or so I thought. We exchanged phone numbers. We hung out a couple of times, but he became incredibly clingy right from the start, so I decided to distance myself in the hope that he would get the hint and back off. Well, he didn't. When I stopped responding, he sent me over 100 messages, with each message becoming increasingly more aggressive as time went on. Keep in mind, it had been less than 2 weeks since we first met. I finally responded and told him he needed to chill out. He appeared to calm down a bit after I responded, but he then asked for a phone call. I agreed and we talked for a while. He told me that he couldn't stop thinking about me, that I was the best thing that ever happened to him, etc. Just a bunch of stuff that is way too intense to say to someone you barely know. I tried to let him down gently, reminding him that I was only home for the summer and wasn't looking for anything serious beyond a fling, but this only made him angrier. He started yelling at me, insulting me, calling me names, basically a complete 180 from what he had been saying mere minutes ago. Then, all of a sudden, the phone went silent. After a pause, he said in a quiet voice, "You had better get ready, because I'm coming over for you," and then he hung up the phone. This was very frightening because he knew my parents were out of town for the week and that I was staying at their house alone. However, he didn't know where my parents' house was because I was always the one driving, and he didn't know my friend either, so I thought he had no way of figuring it out, since, again, I'm normally living at school in another state. Regardless, I locked all the doors and shut the blinds just in case. After a while, maybe an hour or so, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I looked at my phone and saw a notification on my lock screen. It was from the Ring app, indicating there had been movement on my parents' camera. It was him. If you watch the video, you can clearly see something in his hand. When he notices the camera, however, he left. I immediately blocked him on everything and reported the incident. I have no idea what he planned to do once he got here. It was terrifying to realize that he had come over when I was asleep and defenseless, and completely unaware of his presence. As I would find out later, he was able to get my address from my phone number. Apparently he Googled it and it returned my dad's name as the owner of the phone number, along with my parents' address. Please, learn from my mistakes and do not give anyone your phone number unless you trust them. I still can't sleep at night. Hopefully this never happens to anyone else. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed these 5 true scary stories from Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the other videos on my channel, consider liking and commenting below, and subscribing for more. I post new videos every Thursday and Saturday. Until then, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.